But the fact being is, how many of my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, what do they know about Elvis?
Not much, I'm
See,
sure.
and here was the other thing he mentioned is that Moses was writing that song and he had music, but you realize how drastic the music has changed.
Yeah, I don't know their stuff either.
Well, I don't understand that. Joe and I went and watched a great movie yesterday afternoon. It was only one other couple in this theater with us, and that was Unsung Hero. And it's about the life of Rebecca St. James, she's a religious singer and songwriter. But it tells the story of her family coming out of Australia, what they went through in their leadership. And when you look at all of this, the music that she was singing was not the music that her daddy, who was a producer, wanted her to sing. All right. So all of a sudden, he backed up and says, okay, he finally realized, you know more, this has got me, I can run you, and I don't need to do that. And that's where Moses was stepping out. Moses was stepping back saying, okay, it's Joshua's turn. He's got it. And I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to leave you with this song. And you go read his song, and it's all of the 32nd chapter. And it's quite long. He was a musician in a lot of ways. And that put music in their worship. All right? So we have music in ours, and it's not the same. Yes?
When my kids were teenagers, I was driving them somewhere, and they turned on the radio, and they were listening to whatever they were rap stuff they were listening to. And I went, I don't know how on earth y'all can listen to that crap. And my son Sam, who was so calm about everything, he said, you're right, Mom. We should listen to what you and Daddy listen to, and then we learn how to cheat on our wives, how to be drunk all the time. Because that's all it is in country music.
Well, yeah. But then also,
I shut up. I never said another word.
I can understand that, but you got to realize there's more to it than that. But that's what they heard.
Yeah, and that's what I was hearing.
And you and they hear something different on rap. When I hear rap, I hear things sort of like you're suggesting. They think of your music because to me it doesn't jive.
And it doesn't even sound like music to me. I mean, it's not melodic.
and that's one of the things. I was. It's just like reading some poetry. You like poetry?
I do. Oh yes.
You like it to rhyme?
Sometimes. Not necessarily.
Pretty much.
See the different talks? Pretty much, yes, no,
not necessarily.
But if you take it and read it where it's not really, it's all in the metrics that it needs to be and done with that, it tells a story. I was reading some of Tennyson the other day, and I was reading it and I thought, okay, I can understand there is a rhythm in it, but there's not the rhyme, all right? And so we were looking at it. And that's what Moses was doing. All of a sudden, they were going to be taking a totally new music into Canaan. It's like today. I was watching one of my friends' worship service where he's having to have it in a college campus because he doesn't have a church facility. He had 1,400 people there.
Wow, that's nice.
And the music was not what I was used to hearing, all right? I was used to choirs. I was used to organ. But that's not what the young people are hearing today. Now, we go to our granddaughter and son-in-law's church, and they don't have an organ in that building, all right? It's not there. They don't. I'm sure they have a piano, but I haven't seen it. I've seen a keyboard, but I haven't seen a piano. So he was reassuring them that they can and will make it on their own. Did you ever tell that to your children?
Absolutely.
You can do it.
You can do it. That was what kept coming out in this movie that Joe and I saw yesterday afternoon, Unsung Hero. The mother was the one that kept telling them, you can do this, you can do this. Even to her husband, who was saying, I've destroyed us. She says, no, there are good things going to come out of it. So when we think of that, we're realizing that the principles that God has put in place will sustain them, and He sustains us. As we read this and find out what sustained this generation rest as they were making their entry into Canaan, realizing you can live a life of accomplishment, and you're going to have it, but you've got to keep this. And that's why he reread the laws. That's why he was putting Joshua there. That's why he told him God will lead you, and he will be in the midst of all of this. You got to realize he challenges them, he convinces them, and then he encourages them. And I just like, have you ever had anybody say to you, "Don't pump sunshine on me"?
No.
You know, you get to increasing somebody, you know, back off, you know. But I've seen that happen. But anyway,
Is that like blowing smoke?
yeah, that's
Something similar.
that's a similar situation.
Okay.
Yeah, so back off. But you know, but you got to realize that, and Mark is right when he wrote it here. Can you imagine all the teachable moments that were occurring in these 4 chapters, 31 through 34? And when you look at it, realizing all of that is there, the teachable moments. It's time when circumstances in life are such that you and I are able and willing to listen and learn and apply it to our lives. That's hard to do at times, isn't it?
Well, but the thing that got to me was, you know, I've been saying, "Oh, I'm turning everything over to God. I'm turning everything," but I wasn't real. Sure. I was blowing smoke.
And guess what?
For myself.
God knew you were blowing
Well,
smoke too.
and then when I read this, it's like, okay, Lord, whatever you've done, that's got to be the best you've done, because you don't have that much longer to affect anything. This is, you know, you're not just gonna be around, and you better hope you did right. You and Kenny did right, because this is it, bud. I gotta turn it over.
But it's true. You have to. And it's very true. And this is what he was saying to the generation rest. You got to realize something. The real leader is not Joshua.
Yeah, right.
The real leader is God. That's important for us. I mean, I may be the pastor and they may classify me the leader of the church, but God is really the leader. All I am is the mouthpiece. I'm doing what I think the Lord is telling me to do. You know, it's not only that we're thinking about, think about it, he goes in and talks about, how did you feel when you lost a parent?
Pretty sad.
Yeah, that was my hardest funeral.
Yeah.
Going to my mother's funeral.
Oh yeah, you know, it's one of those scenarios. We think on it, but here he is encouraging them, understanding. You know, I think about it. I look at Moses' challenge, but I look at that challenge that Moses was giving the generation rest. Isn't God giving us the same challenges today as we're sitting here looking at all of this and thinking about it? God's given us that. And how many teachable moments in your life can you think about right now that you've had? All right. You know, I preached a time, a crew, about, you know, you can turn a sour note into a melody if you do it correctly and work at it. But, you know, we're here to help everyone identify the real leaders in our lives. As Moses was trying to get them, he was their unsung hero, but in essence, he was encouraging them, and that was that. But, you know, his desire is to see generation rest. Doesn't do what, you know, and wants them to do what God is choosing to do, and don't act like their parents acted. And so he's trying to do his best to help pull that through. But anyway, thoughts? What did you think of when you looked at the point of asking one of the questions back here on way in the back of that page? It says, what change in life was difficult for you to make?
Oh. Leaving teaching.
Leaving teaching. In other words, what you're saying, retirement was a change of life for you.
Well, yeah, but then I didn't really leave teaching.
Right.
You know?
Never.
But when I left.
But you thought you were leaving.
When I officially left.
Well, you know, and so you look at that, you know, he says, if the Lord your God, you will cross ahead of you, he will destroy everything that's in front of you, and you will be able to go on and follow Joshua. But, you know, he does say to us, he doesn't try to hold them for too long. I like what he said about that, not holding him too long. It's the same way with you on a Sunday morning, right? Your mind can only comprehend what your rear end can endure, all right? And that's why we have pew cushions, and that doesn't help a lot of times, all right? We're still uncomfortable in the midst of it all. So when we look at that in spotlight, but Moses knows that his time has come, and his greatest desire is not fame or not a spotlight, all right? But his greatest desire is to see generation rest doing that which God intended them to do. Do you ever stop and think about that in our own lives? Where are we? Are we doing what God intended us to do?
I think about that all the time.
And
Well, I'm hoping that.
oh, you're praying that it's working. I understand, and that's the way it was with me. You know, when you look at this, and you know, I wonder. I get to thinking at times, and I wrote my morning blog. I hope all of you got it. Some of you may not have because of what's going on with AT&T now. But the fact being is, Joy and I tomorrow are going to go to the service of a very close friend of ours, beautiful lady, sweet person. But I am having to go to that. But I'm wondering, we're going to see her children there. Hello there. Hello there.
It's a spam, of course.
That's what but the fact being is that's going to be hard for her children. Yeah. All right, it's not easy. I mean, sure, they put things on Facebook and they got smiles on their faces, but that's the finality. I mean, that's it. It's over with. It's done, and you know, and you can't bring it back. And so Moses does not leave that to chance. What he was leaving him with, he didn't leave him to chance. He wanted them to know. And, you know, he ensured that the leadership was changing, was going to work well. It was sometimes expected. But how many of them were sad that Moses was leaving?
Probably Joshua for sure.
Yeah, Joshua.
Well, and that's true, but you know, they all have that.
Yeah, father,
you know,
he was their fatherly grandfather
you know,
figure.
so you lead that,
Yeah.
you know. It's sort of like I was listening, when I read about him, saying he was a headhunter. I remember recruiting for Whitaker Corporation and being on college campuses and interviewing students and all that stuff, and finding out I didn't have the experience that he did, but I had some experiences with that. But you know, the problem, you know, can sneak up in a church, he said, and it's very true. Never really prepared themselves for a change. Church doesn't. Church doesn't do it. They don't prepare themselves.
Not mine. I turned mine off.
So
I never did.
somebody's looking for you.
Did you notice that even though he was that old, that he was still able to climb the mountain?
Well, yeah, that was the other thing. That got me. I got to thinking, he's going to climb this mountain, all right, and he's ready to get up that mountain. But I'm sitting there wondering, how's he going to get up that mountain?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have trouble right now climbing Pinnacle. Would you?
Unless he took it this way.
And the last time we went up it, I had to take Joy and have a new knee done. But that was an experience in our lives. But when you realize he had to climb that, but the marvelous thing is, I love what he said, because I preached a series one time on the minor prophets. Okay, and when he said majoring in the minors, I all of a sudden thought of preaching that series where we're dealing with the minor prophets, and most people don't ever read those parts of the Old Testament. But it was there, and you know, our message, he said, will change, but the method must be fluid. What does he mean by that?
Well, the words need to be, we don't use the King James Version, for example.
Yeah.
Because those words are not as meaningful for us.
Right.
I mean, some people I still like to read the King James Version. I'm not saying I don't, but
23rd Psalm is written beautifully in it.
Yes, it really is.
It's
But
poetic.
it is. But, you know, they speak differently.
Right.
And that's one thing.
Right. And you know, and as I said earlier, we think about that, and things have changed. And I know what he's gone through when he was doing his headhunting and recruiting. But Moses helps this generation prepare themselves. This is what's the important part for us to think about. Realizing that this was God's plan.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Moses' plan. This was God talking to Moses. Because you remember, God wanted to destroy them when they were out the 40 years in the wilderness, and He was saying, let me find some, please, Lord, don't do this. Let's get them some food. Tell me where I can get it. And God says, okay, Moses, you take care of your part, and I'll take care of my part, and I'll send them food. But if it would be like he was writing, I would have thought that they would have said food on a 2-week supply, and that's what he says, no, I'm going to do it daily. And so when you realize that God was in the midst of all of it, and say, have you ever resisted change? Right now.
Doing it right now.
That's right now. We are to a degree, aren't we? When we think on it that way. So it was that, I laughed when he was talking about how he liked drinking tea and very a long time, and how he went about it and didn't realize he slurped.
Yep.
Do what?
I don't hear that word a lot.
No, I didn't. When I saw that word, I said, all of a sudden I had a vision of the old gentleman back home, probably like in Joy's father's restaurant. They would take their coffee cup and they would pour the coffee in the saucer.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought of. My grandma
And they pick it up,
and
slurp it, and then slurp it, slurp it, this sort of thing.
slurped it out of that saucer every morning.
And they don't do that anymore. In other words, that the book I'm reading right now on Baldacci, I'm glad we are not where we were when he was writing what was going
Of
on.
course.
You were
But
mentioning Moses being able to get up the mountain at that age.
yeah,
It also said that 120 years of age, he had a bright eye, and still, in other words, he was doing really good, which was a gift of God to be able to do that
Absolutely.
with his job.
because he didn't have my trifocals. I mean, they were around there. He could see what,
And he could hear.
and he'd have to have my assistance that I have.
Say what?
Yeah, so.
You can remember. That's the part I didn't
And how many of you know or had parents that were sharp right up to the moment it was all over with? They knew everything. They remembered everything. They, all the details. And it's sort of like, I've had them tell me even what kind of wallpaper was on the wall in the house, that sort of thing. Yeah, those are issues, But change can be expected in all areas of our lives, and that's where we are at times thinking about it. It can be expected. But I like what he said there on the fourth item. He said, the biggest obstacle is fear. The biggest obstacle. Now, you know what fear is, right?
Oh, yeah.
False evidence appearing real, right? But we all have that. I mean, I don't care. How many times have you had something come up and all of a sudden you break out in a cold sweat?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. How many of you took exams and had clammy hands? You're anxious. You had anxieties, and there were fear attacks, and so we have that. And I'm looking what he says: be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or tremble at them, for the Lord your God is one who goes with you. In other words, you're facing the Canaanites, but have no fear. God is with you. And I think I wrote in one of my dailies here a while back, did you know that there are 365 verses in the Bible that have fear not in them? That's one a day.
One a day.
Okay. I didn't find that out. Somebody else took the time to dig all of that, but I took it. But the obstacles of fear, it's emotional. It can be both positive as it can also be that. But fear can also keep us from doing things it can keep us from having a great relationship in life. But it didn't for Moses. On his 120th birthday, he gives a strong pep talk to the Israelites. And he was strong and he was courageous. And I'm sort of like you. I was sort of glad that he had the eyesight that he did. I would take my glasses off and I could see you, but I don't think I want to climb a mountain without them. And without my pole, right? But he says, do not be afraid or tremble. Have you ever been that way?
Yes.
We all have it sometimes. Then he wrote a word in here that I haven't heard in a long time. As I was reading it, he said that the mountain broke him.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to you?
It was
Task
his
was
wrong.
hard.
Yeah, it was a task he wasn't willing to face.
That's when I decided to retire.
Well,
One thing.
when Joy and I were in France the last time, maybe the time before, the Tour de France was going on.
Oh boy.
And we were right outside, right there by the Louvre. They had a place and had them all ready. They'd gotten to some point, and this was the next morning, and they were taking off, and they had them all there, and all of them going. That was flat ground right in there. But then we got into the mountains of France, and they had to do that, and I can see why it broke them. All right, it will break you, but it didn't break Moses. You know, Moses was still there. I know what we was talking about. How many times have you ever had your legs burning when you're trying to get something done, or your lungs screaming at you because sit down and take a deep breath, and on top of that, I can see where it can mentally break you as well. That kind of stress can do so much to you. It's sort of like we were talking earlier, and Joy knows who I'm talking about, the fellow that had so many concussions and wound up with major problems. It broke him, all right? And those things do to us, and it breaks us. Moses had, he never rode a bike. He didn't have a smooth road to climb the mountain. He had to walk up it at 120. But he had the heart, and that's the thing that comes out of this as I read it. Can you imagine the heart of Moses? He had a heart, and it's sort of like that song, "You Got to Have Heart," and he had that. He was able to continue things in life that would break a person. In other words, how many times have you seen that happen in your life? There will be some times in life, and each of us, there's some mountains that are there that are potentially will break us. It doesn't have to be Pinnacle. It doesn't have to be Mount Rainier. It can be a mountain of emotions.
There's a song about that.
What?
This time, Lord, you gave me a mountain.
Yeah. Frankie Lane sent that.
Yeah. Well written.
And he did, a mountain I can't climb, But here was Moses. Moses was able. So God, let God use Moses in our lives to encourage us in ourselves, so that the events that we're
I locked that door. That sounds like somebody coming
Well, Eddie is here. He may
Oh,
be
is he here?
coming and going. But I didn't remember whether I locked that door again.
But he goes on and says, make the transition public. Do we not always?
Well, I'm always conscious of, a lot of people are very private. They just don't want everybody to understand what they're going through and everything. And I sometimes think, I believe I want everybody I know praying for me when I've got a problem. Because that's the help you get from others. That's what the help that comes out of sharing.
It's interesting.
But you trust. See, a lot of people, I think, sometimes just don't. I mean, I might be wrong, but they don't trust enough to share. For whatever reason, I'm going to be judged.
And some things are too hurtful, maybe.
Or too hurtful.
There's a lot of different reasons that brings about the distrust. It doesn't have to be just any one thing. It can be a lot of different
Well, I
things.
didn't mean.
No, I'm talking about it. I know what you're saying. What I'm saying is, in our lives, there are a number of things that sort of create distrust in things. It's sort of like the old boy says, lie to me once, good for you. Lie for me twice, stupid me. All right? But we have to stop and think about it. We have to experience that. I was interested in seeing the new coach from Alabama. He doesn't curse.
That's good.
And he makes it public that he doesn't curse.
That's good.
He said, I want the players coming here and the people that support the University of Alabama know that I don't curse. It's interesting that he wanted to make it public. All right, it's sort of like we have a new coach that came to Arkansas, right, in basketball. What did they ask him? What did he do when he first came? He said, "Want to find a church." He made it public that was important to him, and so that's what we have to do in our lives. And so transition is there. But I sort of laughed. We got an email, we got a text message this morning. Joy has pictures of it. The torch came into France for the Olympics through the port of Marseille, and our granddaughter and her husband and her daughter were in their kayak out there. Can you imagine a 6-month-old baby in a kayak? They have a vest. They had a vest and a life jacket and everything on it. But anyway, that was the torch was being passed. In other words, and so he talks about here when you have a change of leadership, the torch has been passed, the baton has been passed. You ever run a relay race and you have to put the baton in there? And so, and it said there's no hidden agendas, there's no secrets. That's wonderful, but does it always work that way? But Moses is saying, here, this is all out in the open. Open your eyes, open your hearts, and be at it. So, if we're going to pass leadership on to the next coach or the next leader or the next pastor or whomever or the next generation, then do it in public. Make it the military makes it public, all right? They want you to see what's going on, and we do it in a way that we do it in the church as well. It becomes public. It's not sort of hidden, but we do it that way. And the generation is getting ready to have a new reaction.
Hidden is,
Do what?
hidden is your operative word.
Yes. Yes.
Sometimes it's hidden.
Oh,
now.
yes. Well, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you one hidden thing that happened right here at this church. The discipline of the United Methodist Church said the pastor can retire and go to a church, but not back to the church from which he was pastor when he retired. I made a comment to the bishop. I won't call his name. And I said, but this says so and so. But you know what the bishop said to me? And he made it public. It's my conference.
You'll
And I
get my
said,
way.
thank you. And that was, and that was 07. And I'm still here. So that worked well for us, So what are your thoughts? Do you think it was difficult for the Hebrew children to accept Joshua after such a long experience with Moses as their leader? They had him for 40 years.
Yeah.
But they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
What did they?
Because Moses was getting so much older.
Well, I know that, but did that really tap them on the head?
I don't think they knew when it was coming or anything, but I think they knew that this is coming eventually, and I think that makes it easier.
Those of you
It's
that
not a
are
surprise.
Those of you that are mothers, do you ever quit being a mother? Those of you that are fathers, do you ever quit being a father?
Well, it's like one friend of mine told his kids, "You may not like me, but I'm always your dad."
Yeah.
Well, all of us. I was amazed, and I'm sure you were too. I was amazed at how intelligent my father became between the time I was 17 and I was 21.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I couldn't get over how smart he got.
Yeah.
And so, and that's my prayer for my children. When they were 17 until they 21, did they come to realize that I really had a little bit of sense. I wasn't out of it all. So that's where it was. It's 11 o'clock. I know if it's the hour. Do you want to come back and finish this conclusion next Wednesday?
Well, of course.
It'd be easier for you.
Part, yeah.
All right, then tell me what you think of the changes. Okay, we're going to come back next Wednesday
Okay.
and we'll do the conclusions. But give me your thoughts of where you have been through these 12 chapters.
Wow. I don't know
In
about
this
that.
right here.
You're
What
right.
was it? Reckless abandon?
It was yes.
Was it reckless abandon on Moses' part?
No,
It would have had to have been.
I think
Moses-
he did what God told him to do.
Well, he did what God told him to do, yes, but everything that God told him to do, everything that he decided, flew in the face of common sense.
Yes, pretty much.
It didn't just, well, like,
Did you-
this is like,
What did in the face of common sense? I like that because you're right, but I'm not sure that our common sense, Mark, is in the pattern of God's sense. In other words, I think our common sense is because we have the lives we've lived, the cultures we've lived in, the things that are there, and so we build in our minds. At least I do. What I consider a common sense. All right, it's sort of like our son-in-law used to say to his children, "Do the right thing." All right, they said, "What should I do, Dad?" Do the right thing. So what he's saying is use your common sense and think about that. Or he would also say to them, "What about no? Do you not understand?" And that's where we are. You're right, but our common sense comes to us from where? Oh, come on, you're not going
So
to.
called receive wisdom.
Yeah.
That's right.
Experience.
You get that from living life, right?
Yeah.
And when you live life, there's certain experiences. All of us have had things that we've chosen to do and they failed, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least I have. I pray that but out of that comes wisdom, which to me is common sense. I was always amazed at my my grandmother. I mean, here she was. She told me she went to country college, and she was very smart from doing that. But she built a certain sense of what was right, and you think about it, so it becomes a common thing. It's common to us. I'm not sure it's common to us individually, but I'm not sure it's common to us as a collective group, but it's there. And I think Mark is right. That's where we get it from. We have to stop and think on it that way. And the next time we'll look at the death of Moses and come to the conclusions that's in the back of this. What have you thought about this? This is an unusual direction in looking at the book of Deuteronomy. I think Mark has done a good job. Mark
Much
Davis.
more interesting.
And the simple fact knowing he is in Little Rock. He lives in
That's
Little
cool.
Rock. He is a minister. He's with a church in Little Rock. He's not the senior pastor. He's one of the teaching pastors, I think. And so that's what he is about, And so, and our children had their soft opening of their new church last Sunday.
Oh.
Guess where it sits? Right under the towers on Chenal Mountain.
Wow.
Oh,
And they had more than 1,000 in worship.
Wow.
They had people parked along
Wow.
off on the streets and everything. So it was a great time. And that gives you some things. And their music is different from our music, but people like that. And that's what Moses was saying. He was a musician, and he gave them this song, which was a new song to sing. And it was a new avenue. And so
I read in this section too that he gave us the words but not the music. And
That's
so
correct.
We can sing it the way we need to sing it.
well, but that's true. It's like Kathy Sue called me the other day. She said, I had an earworm, and she hummed it to me. And I said, let me think of that for a second, And then I kept getting it playing in my mind. I text her back and says, Living with Jesus. It's a song that we don't have in our Methodist hymnal, but we have it in the Cokesbury. And it's a song that I sung as a kid, and unfortunately, I kept it in my mind all day. I was saying, Kathy Sue, why did you call me and give me that earworm? But it does, and those are things that are playing there. And so, and I kept singing over and over again, Living with Jesus. I sang the chorus and all of it, and that's where it was. And so we have that. Thoughts? Well, next Wednesday we'll shut it down. We'll finish it up.
Okay.
I have a question. Doesn't
yes.
have anything to do with any of this, the church, then your daughter